Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. My name's Satsunami and joining me today is none other than the one and only Pokemon Master that you may have seen on Twitter/X. It is none other than the main account holder of Out of Context Pokemon. It is Kazuhira. Kazuhira, welcome to Satsunami.
Thank you for having me in your podcast. I am really honored to be here today.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
Perfectly okay. I mean, it's the afternoon for me and probably nighttime for you. So, yeah, time zone differences, I guess.
I know, this is one of the few times where I've had to wake up early for the podcast. And I'm like, yeah, sure, it'll be fine. I mean, to be fair, I've had to get up at this time anyway, because that's the thing. Whenever I get someone from abroad and I'm like, okay, what's the time difference? And it's, you know, that meme of the person trying to calculate how
Yeah.
much is it? Yeah, you're like, oh my God. Honestly, I am so glad to have you on today because, as I was saying there, you're, of course, the account owner of the Out of Context Pokemon account, which I have to say has banger after banger of Pokemon memes. Is that right in saying?
Yeah, it's memes, definitely.
Out of curiosity, before we talk about your account and everything and your journey as a content creator, how long have you been a Pokemon fan for?
That's a good question. Anime-wise or game-wise?
Let's go for the games first.
Honestly, I've never owned a Game Boy, neither the color version before. I guess you can say that in the game context of things, I first started playing Ruby in 2003, but it wasn't a copy of my own. It was my cousin's who let me borrow his Game Boy Advance SP at the time. I distinctively remember picking Torchic as my main starter, my very first starter in the games, and still remember my cousins making fun of, well, my other cousin who chose Trico for I don't know what reasons they had. But anime-wise, actually since I was but a wee lad when I was a baby, you know, and I know the anime came out in the 90s, so I didn't have any clear memories of it when I was in that time, but I definitely grew up with the anime since I was a baby. So yeah, I guess you can say that the anime is the one that introduced me to the franchise as a whole.
Yeah, see, looking back on it, I think I was in quite a similar boat. Unfortunately, I didn't start with Ruby, I started with Pokemon Yellow, which makes me feel super old. I say that all the time to be like, yeah, you know, I'm a young person, and then thinking, good lord, the age I was when Pokemon Yellow came out. Because I was the same, I watched the, of course, Adventures with Ash Ketchum, shedding a tear for the fact he's gone now.
Yeah, I still mourn his departure.
For legal reasons, he's not dead, he's just off the anime now.
Yeah, people sometimes treat him as if he's dead or something.
Yeah, because it is weird how long we had the run of Ash Ketchum, all the way from the 90s up until, I want to say a couple of years ago, before they brought out the new Pokemon series.
Around 2 years ago, actually.
Yeah, I want to say it's Pokemon Horizons. Well, not Horizons. Is it Pokemon Horizons?
It's Horizons. Yes.
Yeah. I don't really keep up with the anime. It's only with your page or with other people posting screen caps going, oh my God, I can't believe this happened in the anime. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what's going on. That's what it feels like to be an adult. You're just like, oh, okay, that's what's happening in the anime. Because I have to say, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but one of my very good friends and co-hosts, Martin McAllister, he told me, I think it was during the lockdown or maybe after it, that him and his wife decided to take a bit of a nostalgia trip and rewatch the anime, like the early days of the anime. So it was like the Indigo League and things like that. And he was watching it and he was like, okay, this anime does not hold up as well as I remember it holding up. See for yourself when you're rewatching it, do you feel that way as well?
Sometimes, but you know, I view it more as if I was a kid again. Every time I rewatch the old anime, especially the Indigo League and specifically Advanced Generations, yeah, I still feel like, you know, it still holds up to this day. It's just that I guess the younger fans have much, or rather less of a tolerance for older anime, because I don't know, like personally for me, I feel like they've been treated to too much visuals and all that flashy sequences. That doesn't sit well with my eyes because I don't know, maybe I'm just getting too old.
I'm completely with you there. The amount of animes that have spectacle over storytelling, don't get me wrong, Pokemon was one of those animes that, and I think Dragon Ball did similar things at the time as well, where they repeated a lot of the animation when they had a battle scene and it was like Bulbasaur or something using tackle, and they would just repeat the frame over and over again to like emphasize, But as a kid, you know, as you said, when you're watching this, you don't really notice, or if you do notice, you don't really care, do you? It is just your favourite Pokemon fighting on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, after working at a certain studio, ever since then, I've been watching like cartoons, anime in a much more different perspective. I guess 5 years working there, I can now see the inconsistencies with the anime stuff, like incorrect frames, incorrect color positioning, left out sketches. I've been trained with, I guess you can say it, being enhanced with my already existing eagle eye for those little details and all that.
It's one of those things that you know you enjoy it, and then when you get to see behind the scenes, you get a peek behind the curtain, and then you go, oh, I will never see this the same way again.
Yeah, that's actually my first job. I worked for, well, one of the biggest animation studios in my country, actually.
Oh, wow.
You know, straight off from the bat after graduating, I was like, maybe I should rest. But then my brain says, no, you're getting a job now. And I mean now. So yeah, that's what I did. 10 days after resting, I just sprang up and got a job, go job hunting and all that. It was 5 years, but I worked as a colorist, if I remember correctly. That was under the post-production team. So meaning by the time the product, or rather the drawing, has been sent to us, it's up to us to color it. And that's how I've been trained to spot the inconsistencies in the animation industry.
So you just watching anime nowadays, shaking your head, thinking, you know, if I was working on that anime, that would have never happened.
Yeah, especially the color tones and stuff. I guess there's this one time I saw an anime error in Pokemon where Ash had a different lighting color even though they were in a dark place. Yeah, that's what ruins it for me.
Do you find a difference between when you were working as a colorist versus nowadays, between then and now?
Yeah, actually, from what I've noticed, the older anime days back then, because that was the time when digital art was still in its infancy. So back then they had to meticulously draw everything on paper, and I guess some digital art is involved in that process, but majority of it back then were still handmade. Nowadays, most of it now really is done digitally, barely handmade actually. So yeah, there's definitely a huge difference between then and now, and I'm very sure Pokemon Horizons and the recent Ash anime series, as people call it, also use digital practices in terms of animation.
I mean, that is interesting to see because, and it's something you mentioned earlier about kids not really gravitating towards older animes as opposed to, you know, what they're probably used to now. Because the amount of animes that I've seen recently where you're watching this stuff at the forefront and you think, wow, this looks like a really good anime. Just don't look behind the characters. And it's like they've all got the same walking cycle, and it's really jarring because, don't get me wrong, I know there's obviously time constraints and things like that. They obviously don't want to spend too much time on characters in the background, but it's like you can see they're clearly 3D, but they've just put like a 2D texture over them. They're walking like in the same way, really, really slowly, and you're like, really?
Yeah. Here's a trick that not most people know. Whenever you see a character or a characters walking or running, you'd think that they were animated separately. No. They're doing a very old trick in the book. They actually just move the frames behind them.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
It's actually taken from an old Hollywood trick. Back then when they had horses and cowboys just galloping in the scene. No, there's actually an operated machine with the screen moving behind them to give people the illusion, or rather the impression that they're actually in a moving scene. So they've implemented a very, very old Hollywood technique just translated to animation.
That's really interesting. In terms of animation in a general sense, I've heard that that trick being done before, especially with, I don't know, have you seen A Muppet's Christmas Carol?
As a kid, but not much anymore.
Yeah, there's a scene in that where, and this is something that I brought up with my friend and co-host Andrew, that apparently there's a scene where Kermit the Frog, he's walking through the streets and everything, and you think, oh, the easiest thing would be just to walk towards the camera, but turns out what they did was they had this huge drum underneath. So what they did was they spun the ground to make it look like Kermit was moving. So he was just walking on the same two spots, and they just kept rolling it as if it was. It's amazing what animators, and especially in that field as well, it's amazing what they do to, as you were saying, that perfect word, to create that illusion of, oh look, they're doing X thing, they're doing Y thing.
That's good. Even though I'm no longer in the animation industry, I still love watching cartoons and anime, especially Pokemon. Just that, I don't know, Horizons doesn't click much with me. I guess it really just boils down to having to take time getting used to it, really.
No, you're completely right though, because, and maybe this is just a 90s, early 2000s thing where cartoons and anime at the time, they were kind of made more to sell a product. With Pokemon, their catchphrase used to be, gotta catch them all, up until, I want to say generation 4 or 5 maybe? I think it was maybe up until 5, and then they got rid of that because there were so many Pokemon. And then they're just like, yeah, catch them if you want, not catch them all if you can.
It's really funny how Pokemon, evolves throughout the generations, and now we have people younger than us. You're not younger than us, who will grow up never knowing or not knowing who Ash Ketchum is and what his legacy is.
Do you know, it was funny because my friend Martin McAllister and I, when we did our Pokemon month for the podcast, what we ended up doing was an episode where we talked about, and I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this, we did an episode on Pokemon rumours. So, we talked about what we heard in the playground and things, about Generation 1, Generation 2, and the one thing that we were really fascinated by when we were going over these was the fact that it was so universal, not just in the playground, not just in Scotland, not even just in the UK, but internationally. So, things like Mew hiding under the truck, Professor Oak being battle-worthy, as it were. Did you have any particular rumours at the time for the games that you remember?
Oh, yeah, but it's more of a creepy one rather than a fascinating one, actually. Ever heard of the creepypasta about a certain place called, what's the name again? It's from Generation 1, actually.
Is it Lavender Town?
Yeah, there we go, Lavender Town, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware.
That's one of the earliest rumors I've heard when I was a kid. Something about kids offing themselves when a certain frequency hits their ears. I was really scared when I first heard that. Even asked my dad, is this true? And he's like, no, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah, but I guess on the brighter side, well, this would be in my teenage years now, because there was a point in time where Digimon actually, did battle with my interest. So yeah, teenage years, I've heard of, I don't know, something about a furry type cat legendary, which I didn't believe at first, but then I guess Sun and Moon games came out. That turned out to be real, and it was Zero Aura, which really surprised me.
Yeah, because the amount of, at least during the Gen 1 days, and it's something that Martin did, prefaced it very well where he said, although these might sound ridiculous, Generation 1 was just a ridiculous generation in its own right. The amount of glitches that you had, there's ways to catch Mew in those games legitimately. Well, I say legitimately with glitches, but at the same time, there's a way to catch Mew and other Pokemon, level 1 Pokemon, without an action replay. So the amount that they got away with in Generation 1, it's not hard to believe some of them. One of my favourites was the April Fool's prank someone pulled where they said you could catch Yoshi from the Mario games in Pokemon. It was just such a crazy generation, that just, it popped up. You were like, wow, this is an amazing yet very, very strange game.
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, that Mew being found under the truck, I guess I can equate that similarly to the Shenlong rumors back in Street Fighter. The only difference is Capcom actually capitalized on that hoax decades later and made him into a real character.
Yeah.
Whereas Pokemon, if you actually try it it in, I guess, Let's Go Even Pikachu, you just get some berries or something? I don't know.
I think it's a lava cookie or something. I could be wrong in that. It's some treat that you can give your Pokemon. But I remember everyone reacting to that, initially going, oh, that's a cool Easter egg, to, where's Mew?
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
It's like, haha, very funny joke. Now where's Mew? Game Freak, come on.
Game Freak, come on, pay up. I guess I can't relate much to Gen 1 in the games and 2 because really Gen 3 was my starting point. So whenever people would say, Charizard, that's a classic, I was like, huh? What are you talking about?
It's interesting how different Gen 3 was compared to the other two. Not obviously because of the graphical update and the fact that you couldn't really trade between the two. Because you had Generation 1 and 2 for the Game Boy or Game Boy Color, Game Boy Pocket, whatever Game Boy you want to put before.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the Game Boy Advance / XP came out here internationally, what ended up happening was you had Pokemon Sapphire, Ruby, Emerald, which we will come on to, and then you had Leaf Green, Fire Red, those kind of ones that felt completely isolated in their own Pokebubble, as it were.
Yeah.
The amount of hype at the time, was it the same over there, that the hype that Generation 3 generated was just massive?
It really is. And in where I live, actually, Pokemon pop off really well. Like, I guess to this day, you can say that the entire Southeast Asian region, our country is still the biggest consumer of the Pokemon franchise. Not just as a niche, but as a community as a whole. I guess when you compare it, I guess we're number 1, Singapore is number 2, and Malaysia being 3rd in place. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, we're the number 1. Ask anyone, really.
I mean, obviously, Pokemon is apparently one of, if not the most popular franchise in the world for media. You've got the games, you've got the films, you've got the anime, you've got the plushies, you've got so much. I say that, thinking, oh, I would never get swept into that. I'm currently looking at 3 statues. Well, I say statues, plastic statues that I've got on my desk just now of the 3 Kanto starters. Right above them, I've got 2 plushies of Totodile and Porygon 2. It's amazing how much this franchise took off, because I have to admit, this is something I kind of thought about when we were doing Pokemon Month, that our parents must have just been looking at this franchise going, what the heck is a Pikachu? What the heck is a Torchic? What's this and that? And thinking, oh, it's fine as long as they enjoy it. And then us, of course, being so enraptured in it, thinking, oh, this is amazing, the best thing ever. But speaking of the Philippines, I've got a question for you, and I hope you don't mind me asking this in relation to the Philippines and Pokemon, because in Scotland we have had our fair share of dud cons, and by that I mean cons or events that people have arranged. And
why do I have a feeling I know which con you're gonna ask me?
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that con, because I just want to preface this before we go into this, that I come from a place where someone tried to make a Willy Wonka experience, and I don't know if you heard this on the news.
I heard this.
Yep. I'm glad it's so international, I said with sadness. But yeah, where someone made a Willy Wonka experience and they used AI, and it was like a pathetic warehouse. Fun fact, I think he got arrested. Not for that, but just in general.
Yeah, fraud, if I believe to be it. It's fraud.
Yeah. But I'm going to ask about the Pokemon con / experience in the Philippines. How did you feel about that? Of course, being a massive Pokemon fan yourself and then seeing this unfold. How did you feel about that?
Oh, you mean Pokeverse?
That's the one. Yep.
Funny enough, I was actually treated to a ticket. One of the expensive ones, actually, yeah. Yeah, I had some money put into it, but half of it was paid by a friend of mine. Yeah, I know how much you want to see your hero, so yeah, go there, get lost. So, I went there and I don't know, it just feels flat in terms of social gatherings and stuff. But then when you dive deeper, things gets a lot more scummy, because first of all, the organizer himself, like no beef with him, but if I remember correctly, he's runs a crypto company, which actually I did a call out on this last May. I'm sure you've seen this one too.
Yeah.
He runs a crypto company and his mother runs a feng shui shop, which actually is a sketchy business in itself. Since people here believes in that stuff. It's hard to dispel that what I call snake oil business. So yeah, one of their sponsors is his mom, a feng shui shop. So when you have sponsors, you usually give them the highlight of the show. So imagine going to a Pokemon convention, expecting to see this big, massive Pikachu mascot just there to greet you. No, they said, nope, you're being treated to a feng shui shop. Suck it up. It's jarring, really. What's the focus? Is it the sponsors or the fans? Come on, make up your mind.
I mean, on the one hand, you could think, oh, well, at least if the rest of it was well put together and everything, and you could probably sneak a feng shui shop in there and be like, okay, here it is at the end of like a long line of Pokemon things. But yeah, it kind of seems weird that that was the most prominent thing. And again, I'm no Pokemon professor or researcher here, but I don't think the Venn diagram for Pokemon fans and feng shui enthusiasts overlap.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, sure, maybe some fans believe in feng shui, but I'm telling you right now, 95% of fans here, especially the older and younger ones, will definitely. Can I curse? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, they don't give a. They don't give a damn. You give them feng shui, they'll say, we want Pokemon. That's what we're here for.
Am I right in thinking, was this the Pokemon con where they had real guests as well?
Yes, which is really sad because the guests in question, I don't know if I should say their names. Can I actually?
Yeah, sure. Is this Jason Page and Veronica Taylor?
Yeah, it's these two wonderful people, really. If I remember correctly, Veronica Taylor herself wasn't paid her talent fees. In fact, if my memory serves me right, she did this out of the kindness of her heart. And I guess, personally for me, I believe that one of the sponsors, which is the main airlines of this country, paid for her fare, so I'm pretty sure that's a possibility. But yeah, she didn't get her talent fees paid. She just really wanted to be there for the fans, really.
That is such a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame because on one hand, you have this very terribly organized convention who is beefing with another existing convention, which is actually run by wonderful people in this community. And then you have, real stars, real people who help children of all ages, of all countries grow up. Just there, being there for the fans. It's like you feel conflicted whether to feel excited or just disgusted,
That is the thing about Pokemon. It's in a very unique position where, I mean, depending on what fan you ask, but Pokemon is still strong within pop culture and things like that. People know what a Pikachu is. At the very least, if you don't know what Pokemon is, you know what Pikachu is. And the fact that you've got an older fan base, like, I'll say myself, I won't say you, I won't bring you into the...
It's okay.
But older fans who grew up with the games, who have that heavy nostalgia for it. And then you've got younger fans as well who are growing up with the new series, with the new games and things like that. And the fact is, you've got that overlap of something that, although obviously it's made to sell toys and whatnot, at the end of the day, it's something that is so important for people. It holds a special place in people's hearts, as I said, their nostalgic brains, as it were. And then to go to something like this, where I have to admit, when I was reading up the details, it wasn't the worst that I've ever heard about in terms of really bad cons, but it didn't do itself any favours from what I heard.
It didn't. People labeled this disaster either DashCon or a genuine attempt of dethroning the Willy Wonka experience.
I mean, maybe... I feel as if right now that is our national disgrace in terms of exports, the Willy Wonka experience.
Yeah.
When I saw that in the news, I was like, yep, it's a flash in the pan, it will never take off. And then the Americans got a hold of it, and I thought, oh, god damn it, they're going to meme the hell out of this.
Yeah.
Now you've got people actively wanting to go to the musical and things.
Oh, Lord.
Whereas, as I was saying, I do feel so sorry for people who saved up, they wanted to go to this. It is such a slap in the face for fans, though.
It is. I mean, the only positive experience I've had there really was meeting friends and, of course, Miss Veronica Taylor, which she was so super delightful person to talk with. You can really hear her, love for the fans and see it in her expressions and everything, really. She's not trying to be a grift or anything. She's just genuinely appreciative of the fans who are there for her and Jason Page as well.
Yeah, Jason Page surprisingly definitely gets around in the fan base with collaborations and things. The one that really threw me off completely was, I don't know if you've heard of Jonathan Young.
No.
He's a musician on YouTube, does some amazing covers and original music. And one day he released a video of the Pokemon theme that he covered, and I thought, oh, right, cool, that's amazing. And then it said in the title, feat Jason Page. And I was like, wait, the Jason Page, the same guy?
Yeah.
And, you know, I looked up and I watched the video, and he does like a full-on collaboration with the guy, where they're both like up a hillside building the Pokemon team. It is one of the coolest nostalgic things ever. I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. But yeah, it's so cool to see him involved in that.
Yeah, it is. Like, the man is not perfect. Of course, he has his own shortcomings, but I cannot deny, whenever I repeat the songs he used to produce back then, it really takes me back to the 90s. And yes, he was also a delightful person to be with. In fact, I gave both him and Miss Veronica Taylor drawings of my own, and they were really like, you sure it's for me? You know, I got some of my things signed, like this Ash Ketchum photo frame that I bought from her. You know, I actually went to IKEA just to get this frame. No joke. Yeah, I guess the memorable thing really in that con is them and friends. And no joke, she said this to me, that she really believes that I am a kind-hearted and generous person, which I have to admit, I was trying to hold back from either crying or just, you know, passing out from being told that from one of the people who voiced one of my heroes, really. But everything else was a disaster. In fact, if I remember correctly, one of my friends was actually with the singers there. She won a contest to be with Jason Page, and I mean, I'm not gonna say the intricate details, but generally she did not have a good time as much as she would have wanted to. And I helped her actually blow up the expose. She's the one who wrote the expose.
Is that the same person? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's how I found out about this.
She was like, you gotta help me blow this up. And I was like, yeah, sure. Just tell me when it's done. I'll retweet it. And it was already gaining traction while she was live tweeting it. But I believe by the time I retweeted it, I think that was the final nail in the coffin, because the wider audience was made aware of it.
I have to say, see, when she was live tweeting it and everything, I had the popcorn out. I was scrolling down thinking, how can this get any worse, surely? And then, of course, you saw tweet after tweet, you're like, oh my.
Yeah. She's a very good person. So for her to be this angry, you must have done something wrong, really.
Yeah.
Being someone who really does not like grifters and scammers, of course, I did not hesitate to, say yes to helping them being exposed in the public. I guess a month or two after that, someone actually told me that the organizers hate my guts. I believe it was because of the call-out post I did last May. That's the reason why they hate my guts. Because they were like, oh, see Pokemon, they did a call-out post on us.
That is something that I think is absolutely fantastic that you do with the Twitter page. Because as I was saying before, I said that you post a lot of memes on there, a lot of Pokemon content, that kind of thing. When I was looking through, I remember thinking, all right, this is just another novelty page. And yeah, that, give it a like, give it a follow.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I didn't expect, and I think this is absolutely fantastic for someone of your channel size to do, is you're not afraid to call out people who are very deceptive or just very not constructive, let's just say, in the nicest way possible.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Whether that is the con-goers, which you've made their hit list, or whether it's scalpers, because that's the recent one, and I had to jump on the bandwagon as well, because I don't know if it's as bad in the Philippines.
It's bad too.
Is it as bad? Oh, it is horrible here. I don't know when this began, but there was, I think it might have been Logan Paul, the
Screw him! He started this bullshit! He should be arrested just for that.
You want to put that in a t-shirt? Out of context Pokemon, he should be arrested.
I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I actually did a post on that, and I explicitly called out his name, saying that Logan Paul should be arrested. He's the one who started all of this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to dislike the guy. But,
no, I've disliked him long before that.
But that's what I'm saying. There's hundreds of reasons to say he is a very contentious man, let's just say.
Yeah,
again, in the nicest of possible ways. Not a big fan of him at all, but
yeah,
that's one of the few times games, I will call out particular people that I was really baffled when, I think it was his boxing or
Wrestling.
maybe wrestling. That's the one that's his brother that boxes, apologies.
Wrestling, which I have to cut this in. Triple H, what the hell are you doing? Cut him off already!
Because he came out with his wrestling career and then he had like a limited
Pikachu.
edition. No, was it not Charizard?
It was a Charizard. Alright, the necklace thing.
Where he came out and he was kissing it and everything and saying, oh, it's a great investment. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember before this that the Charizard card was very highly coveted. Everybody wanted one, but they were really expensive. But unfortunately, you know, it was that kind of bubble where people were only going for Charizard. They weren't going for any other cards. But unfortunately, we had these people saying that Pokemon was an investment, and especially Pokemon cards were an investment. And it frustrates me to no end that the whole landscape of the Pokemon trading card game, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not a big collector myself. I'll buy the occasional pack out of nostalgia or something like that, but I'm not really into the game unless you talk about the mobile app, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, it makes me so sad knowing that there are kids out there that will never experience the Pokemon trading card game the same, all because of these scalpers, these grifters, and I know you've got very strong opinions on this, especially.
Yeah, they're criminals, plain and simple. It still baffles me why the police haven't arrested them for logging out carts and carts of cards.
That is the sad thing, that when you go into shops and they have the big signs that say 1 per customer, 2 per customer, that kind of thing. But it seems as if the ones I always see are the American ones, and you get really weird accounts that don't really add to the conversation.
Bots or scalpers.
I mean, with your account, as I was saying, you at least add some commentary and, you know, you call out these people, rightfully so. But the amount of people who I've seen, they say, oh, what would you do if you went into the shop and saw this? And you're like, what do you mean? You know, it's a bunch of adults, 30, 40 somethings, taking literally trolleyfuls of these cards to the checkout just so they can sell them for double the price. It is insanity. Honestly, that was not my bingo card growing up. You know that way when you play Pokemon, you're like, wow, I can't wait to see what Pokemon's like in 10 or 20 years. I bet we're going to have the big MMO RPG. We're going to have different cards, different Pokemon. What are we going to have? And now we've got a state of affairs where Nintendo themselves won't even release the old games officially. I mean, they did. And then they said, oh yeah, we're shutting down the Nintendo 3DS eShop, so we're not going to sell them legitimately anymore. But oh, don't you go and look for them illegally. So you're like, well, okay, fine. Maybe I'll buy a copy to relive the glory days. And don't get me wrong, some copies can be quite cheap, but I will be damned if I'm going to pay £80 for a game that I grew up with. And I don't mean, oh, it's so special. I mean, it's like games you don't even know if they're legit or not, because I know it's like a lot easier to clone those types of games. Like, you couldn't go into a second-hand shop and, I mean, maybe, I don't know the ins and outs of this, but I don't know if you could go into a shop and buy a 360 game or a PlayStation 3 game or something like that, and, you know, it's a fake. But for Pokemon games especially, I know at least when we were growing up, there was a lot of people who cloned the games and then they sold the fake carts on eBay and things like that, which I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not really giving anybody any options there. They put out a product for a limited time and then they shrug and go, okay, what are you going to do?
Oh god, yeah. The worst experience I've had was the Van Gogh collaboration.
Oh, that was horrific.
Like, I wasn't in Amsterdam myself, but I was fighting scalpers left and right in the digital space. Like, yeah, I tried the Pokemon Center. You know what? Fine, I give up. You have it. But what I did not want to give up on was the paintings.
Yeah.
So, you know, imagine having to stay up with just 5 hours of sleep just so you can get either 1 or 2 paintings, because some can't be bothered to buy a limit just for themselves. Successfully, I did get 2 paintings. It's an Eevee and a Smeargle. But points aside, yeah, they really do keep shooting themselves in the foot by saying, oh, this is a limited item. We're not restocking this. So, you know, scalpers will have more incentives to, you know, become more of a criminal than they are already.
This is going to sound like a weird question to ask, but do you think that Nintendo are stuck in quite a... And when I say Nintendo, I mean overall the Pokemon Company, Game Freak, you know, all of them in one big collective blob like a ditto. But do you think that they're stuck in quite a traditional mindset, that they think that they can do these kind of limited releases like they used to do back in the 90s and whatnot, and think, oh, this will still work in this day and age with the internet and whatnot going on.
Yeah, you see, here's the thing. Even philosophers back then believed that if one does not change, then you are doomed for life. So I truly believe that Nintendo must change, especially with how fast the flow of time is and how trends change. Because if they don't, they will eventually fail. They believe they're too big to fail, but we've heard the same about banks, and look what happened in 2008. So yeah, I believe the same will happen to Nintendo if they don't get their act together.
And this is actually something that I was talking about with my friends the other day when we were looking at the contemporary gaming landscape. And this sounds like a very weird tangent, apologies, but it's where Xbox especially, what they were saying recently was that they were going to relinquish the license for some of their exclusive games. So things like Halo especially, that is massive, that they're going to say, oh yeah, we'll let Sony have the rights to distribute it so you can play Halo on your PlayStation 5. And I don't think there's been as big a crossover like that since, I would probably say, since Sonic came to Nintendo. You know, it's a massive thing. And it seems as if nowadays that a lot of these companies, even Sony, I think they might be going next, that they're moving away from the console market and they're going more for cloud gaming and, oh, you can play the Xbox anywhere, that kind of thing, that they want the gaming experience, but they don't want to put the money into the hardware and things. Whereas Nintendo, obviously Microsoft and Sony, they are big companies in their own right. So although that's a big chunk of their revenue, at least if they drop that, then they could invest it in other places they would be able to stand on their own. With Nintendo though, looking back onto that, I don't know how well they would manage. See, without the console market, because obviously that is their primary source of bread and butter,
Yeah.
but I don't know how they would cope in comparison.
I have no idea as well, but I'm saying it now. If they enter the PC market, I believe that they will reach into even greater heights.
That's the thing. I don't think they have the vision for it. And again, this is someone who lives in Scotland, is recording this in his house right now, versus a multi-billion, trillion, whatever they're at now, company. I'm not going to say I know the first thing about business and whatnot. What they're doing is they're earning money. They're clearly doing something right. I can't obviously fault them for that, but I feel as if, agreeing with you here totally, there is a dangerous trend here with Nintendo that they want to cash in on the nostalgia. They want to release a great game and then be like, oh, you like that? Here's more, here's more. You know, every so often they'll have an innovative product like the Switch, for example, versus the Wii U, which didn't sell very well. But I feel as if the worst place, and again, I think this is more a Game Freak issue and the Pokemon company as a whole rather than Nintendo, but the state of the games is something that is quite interesting. I'm curious to hear your opinions on this especially, but I mean, you saw it with Generation 1 to 3 that they were probably the strongest period of the franchise. Generation 4 was beloved, but you could tell by Generation 4 to 5 it was getting a little bit tired. Although it was still going strong, it was getting tired. And now we've got to the Scarlet and Violet stage nowadays where when they released the game, it was riddled with bugs, it was riddled with just an incomplete game. Same with the Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. They weren't really received well. Do you think there's an issue there, see, with the quality of the games coming out? Do you think it's going downhill, or do you think it's kind of on par?
I do believe that having these yearly releases does affect the quality, because I guess on a business perspective, they believe they must keep the ball rolling because the merch, especially the anime, relies on the games. But I guess on a fan perspective, and especially general perspective outside the business, you gotta give these wonderful people working for you more than a year to work on your games, because otherwise you'll be on a dangerous trend where you're just releasing games for the sake of not just for business but for the fans as well. You know, it's important to maintain good relations with your fans, because if they keep coming back and they say that your games are really good, please keep it up, then I'd say that's a good sign. But if you got fans rallying against you saying that, why is it like this, we didn't expect much, but what the hell, a trend that you must avoid when that's starting to happening. And I guess they took it to heart this time with the ZA game that they're developing right now.
Yeah, I have to say I did not expect ZA to be a thing. I was honestly so hyped for either a remake of Gen 5 or a callback to Generation 2 2, and then, when they brought that out, I was like, oh, yay, back to X and Y, yay, my favourite.
It's funny because we actually made a video about the Pokemon Day memes. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but if you've seen it, you remember there's two clowns fighting each other with the Master Quest team, and then the text was like Pokemon, I guess Gen 2 and 5 fans fighting over which game is coming out on Pokemon Day, and then you have these spin-off games just casually chatting about their day and how, I don't know, checking up on whether they expect to get a game or not.
Honestly, it just totally blindsided me. That is the thing, going back to the progress of the games. I have to say, it's a game series that, see, when you were younger, you could excuse the faults because you were having fun. Obviously, that doesn't just apply to Pokemon, that applies to a lot of games. I'm a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, so I'm in a place of authority there for bad games, but it's like, it's okay, I still enjoyed it. And I think, genuinely, my personal peak was Generation 5. We went from a game series that they were putting in their all and everything to the director in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire openly saying that a lot of kids nowadays, they want to play games on their phone and things. That's why they didn't have the Battlefront tier, which was so disappointing that people thought, oh, maybe they'll do it as DLC or something, which I think at the time DLC wasn't really a thing for Pokemon, whereas
It wasn't,
after Sword and Shield, and now it is a massive thing, which is so strange.
It really is.
But it's weird seeing Pokemon go down that same way. Something you brought up there, I just want to touch on, that a lot of fans, at least for any other franchise, this is so fascinating because any other franchise, if you said to fans, vote with your wallet, do not buy this game, obviously you're going to get the same people buying it. But if these companies get enough backlash, like for example, one of the ones that always comes to mind is the Star Wars Battlefront game, or Battlefront 2, the relatively newish one, where they were going to have microtransactions and loot boxes, and the fans caused such an outrage to that they had to, I think it was because of a Reddit AMA or something, that they had to just backtrack and say, okay, we're going to take these out of the game because of that. But Pokemon seems to be in this very, very unique place where even if you get all the older fans saying, no, I'm not buying this game, nah, I don't like this game, you've got a whole generation of kids who are just sucked into this cycle until they're asking their parents, and the parents don't care. The parents just want to make their kids happy for obvious reasons. And I'm not saying that as a slight against parents buying their kids these games. If they want to buy them, that's their choice. But it is weird to think that even if the adults stop buying it, it'll be the children who, well, not them personally funding it, but their parents for Christmas saying, oh, little Jimmy likes Pokemon, let's get him Pokemon for Christmas. It's always going to be that cycle, isn't it?
It's a vicious cycle which will unfortunately keep on happening for generations to come.
And I don't mean this in a very nihilistic and very depressing way, but I genuinely don't see an end to Pokemon anytime soon. Being a Pokemon account yourself, I know you live and breathe this topic, but do you think it's still going to go strong in the future?
No doubt about it. The fact that Disney used to be the number one grossing franchise and Pokemon just, in a few months or years just kicked them off that platform and still retains that number to this day. I mean, I guess they say you can be someone in like the year 2090 and Pokemon will still be as relevant as it was today.
It's very, very bizarre. It's something that, I mean, as I was saying, as a kid in the 90s and early 2000s playing Pokemon, I was really hopeful for the future, being like, oh, I can't wait to see the different kind of Pokemon and this and that. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to come off as a Gen 1er, Pokemon in Generation 1 was the best. No, it wasn't. Take it from me. I love Pokemon Blue, Red and Yellow, and Green to an extent, but that's a whole other thing. Generation 2 was probably where I really, really got into it. But honestly, I kept thinking, oh, where are they going to go with this? What are they going to do? And, it was so cool seeing it build up and up and up. But obviously, when you're older, you do see games in a different way. It's going back to what you were saying about anime doing work on that because you've seen behind the scenes that you know how it all works. And I think especially with, nowadays we've got the competitive scene and whatnot. I mean, do you think that contributes to it a wee bit? People wanting to keep up with the competitive side of Pokemon?
I have no idea, but I do know there are lots of wonderful people in the VGC scene. Shout out to Corsola Cove, by the way, you guys rock. But yeah, I do believe that Pokemon will still be relevant in the future. In fact, I think this is just a wild speculation. I believe they're still gonna retain that number one position in terms of the highest grossing franchise in history. So yeah, suck it up, Disney. You're not gonna get that spot back anytime soon.
Well, unless they quote-unquote decide to buy them out, which, they have as much chance of that as Microsoft did when they attempted to buy them.
Yeah.
The fact that Microsoft tried to buy Nintendo will never not make me laugh.
Same.
It's like having a money printer and saying, oh, sure, I'll give you my money printer, no problem. Microsoft is like, yeah, come on, have a word with yourself. But that is an interesting point, though, because as I was saying, how although the games and the official media are quite mixedly received, you still got kids who are enjoying it, which honestly, I'm delighted that there are people out there who still enjoy the series the same, because I don't want anyone to listen to this and think, oh, we're just ragging on it, saying, oh, it's terrible and things. But one of the interesting things is how the Pokemon community has actually taken this franchise and they've developed their own identity around it, like challenge runs and things like that. In particular, of course, Nuzlocke, which, and this brings me on to my next point very nicely, that I got the extreme honour of being able to see you go through your very first, not only very first Twitch stream, but also a Nuzlocke run of Pokemon Emerald. And that is amazing how the fans have basically taken these particular challenge runs and things like that and have breathed a whole new life into Pokemon.
It really is interesting, yeah. Especially VGC runs and, how they produce memes that the average fan wouldn't understand but still get a laugh out of it.
And of course, going off of that, as I was saying there, not only do you have the Twitter profile, you of course have started streaming. I've got to ask, for all the listeners out there very curious about how you got on, how did it feel?
Well, it was, I guess, a unique experience, really, because, I wasn't expecting 1,000 followers, because, let's face it, unless you're, I don't know, Michael Jackson or John Cena going on Twitch and just calling out fans and say, hey, good to see you, brother, or whatever, I didn't expect that much. In fact, I'm just happy that I got 40 followers on Twitch. And I guess I was nervous, really nervous. Yes. The only thing that I really invested on was that PNG tuber model. I bought it on Fiverr because I couldn't find anyone in my friends list who are open at the moment. I guess I hold the world's shortest Nuzlocke run because if I remember correctly, I left off at 1 hour 46 minutes 52 seconds. So, and I've been hearing a lot of people saying you should have chosen Mudkip, which I guess, good point, but I forgot that Roxanne is a rock type leader. But funny thing is, my Torchic somehow said, if I'm gonna die, I might as well take you with me and just unleash 6 critical hits in a row before it died.
That part of the game is almost a Nuzlocke killer, I want to say. I remember when my friend and I, Andrew, we did a kind of co-op Nuzlocke run, and that was absolutely terrifying because we managed to get through Roxanne because we had Mudkip, which had evolved into Marshtop, and I thought, oh right, that's okay, we're fine. But then when we got outside, we found May, and we're like, oh sure, let's talk to May, and she initiated a battle. Genuinely, see the first part, that was fine, but we only had, I think we had a Wurmple, Poochyena, and Archtop, which was grossly over-leveled. Yeah, it did not go well. Our Poochyena got absolutely wrecked, but fortunately, because we sand attacked quite a lot, we managed to use a bite on him, and we won by the skin of our teeth. But that moment, I feel as if catches a lot of people who are Nuzlocking Pokemon Emerald off. Yeah.
I guess really my defining moment in my Nuzlocke is really just Torchic going all out against rock types too.
I mean, that's still a memorable moment, to be fair. You can only come back stronger from that.
Oh yeah, definitely know what to do next, which is evolve it into Humbuskin and, just kick the hell out of it.
But honestly, it was such a delight watching that stream. I genuinely thought you did a fantastic job, and I do agree. I think the PNG that you used, absolutely fantastic. You know, it's ironic because I actually do have a friend who I met over the 2020 lockdowns. He goes by Rose Carlo or Carlo on Twitter and I think Instagram as well, other places. And he does all of my, I don't know if you see that, like, see all the chibi art for my channel.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, he is absolutely fantastic guy. I would recommend him in a heartbeat. But it's always funny because, as you know, the mascot's a red panda. So I think at this stage he's kind of expecting now for me to be like, okay, what if red panda, but Pokemon trainer? And he's like, you know what, fine. It's all right. Honestly, it was an absolutely fantastic stream to watch. And I have to say, I remember you were saying, oh yeah, you know, I was doing all right and everything. Honestly, I thought you were doing absolutely fantastic because it's such a hard thing, see, to get over that first stream. Because ironically enough, I played Pokemon for my very first stream in 2020. It was a very poorly translated version of Pokemon Green, which, as you know, Pokemon Green was only released as a
Japanese exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. And then somebody had translated it. I don't know where I got this game from, but I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm sure it can't be that bad. It is one of the weirdest, most surreal experiences. They don't call them Pokemon, they call them pets or elves. Really, really weird. There's people asking for France flavour cakes. That's literally word for word what they say.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of really weird translations. I don't know who translated it, but yeah, that was my first experience doing a Nuzlocke run for that. Yeah, Pokemon is just one of those things. It's one of those things that you think, okay, I've grown up, I've become an adult, time to do adult things. And then it's always kind of lurking in the back of your mind, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun, really, how life changes that way.
See, out of curiosity though, did you ever have a moment where you not fell out of love with Pokemon, but you kind of distanced yourself and then you came back to it later on?
Yeah, I did. There was a time when Digimon was actually overlapping with my interests. So around Gen 4, well, at the end of Gen 4, I guess I kind of moved on because I never did own a DS. That was my sister, actually. It was a pink DS Lite. And I had a PSP back then. So yeah, I kind of fell out with Pokemon after Gen 4. And Digimon was like, hey, buddy. Okay, I love both, actually. In fact, I'd still say that those two are, I guess, one of my most defining anime series in my childhood. Because on one hand, you've got, you know, you're singing in the morning Jason Page's memorable "Gotta Catch 'Em All," you know, song. And then on the other end, on Saturday mornings, you'll be listening to Aima Eda's "I Wish" ending theme for the first Digimon Adventure series, which, by the way, is still my favorite ending theme to this day. Like, really, it really holds a special place in my heart.
I take it you didn't get the same soundtrack to Digimon, did you? Would you have got the Japanese?
I got the Japanese, yes.
We in the UK for Digimon did not get that pleasure.
I know Saban had the rights to the English release, which, I mean, yeah, did fairly better than 4Kids, but 4Kids is more memorable because of how unhinged their dubs were.
Oh, yeah.
But Saban was a definitely entirely different thing.
Going on to 4Kids, I can't believe we haven't mentioned that yet, but especially with Pokemon, that they had to localise it. For anyone who doesn't know, that 4Kids was the dubbing company that got the rights during the 90s, early 2000s, or mid 2000s, and they had to localise everything in the dub. So with things like onigiri, which, you know, are the
jelly donuts.
Yeah, the jelly donuts, exactly. They were like these rice balls for anyone who doesn't know, but yeah, obviously we don't have onigiri here in the UK, or we probably do now, but they're not as common, and especially in the 90s.
Yeah.
As a kid, I would not have known what they were. So, of course, there was an infamous scene where Brock holds up this rice ball and goes, "Everybody loves a jelly-filled donut." You have no idea how desperate I was to try them, to be like, wow, they're really cool jelly-filled donuts.
Yeah.
Because the best one I saw, I think it was one of the Hoenn episodes where Ash, he's in the forest or something, and a huge rice ball hits him, so he grabs it and the guy runs after him. But of course, I think at that point they were able to draw over that. they changed it to a sandwich.
It's a baguette, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the longest sandwich you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like, why did they change it to that? Because it would have all fallen out. Like, I get why for localization reasons, but it's honestly crazy. And going back to Digimon, of course, 4Kids were responsible for that because we actually, funny enough, we've never done a review as such for the Digimon film here, where they basically, for anyone who doesn't know, they took 3 Japanese Digimon films, put them together, and then made an overarching narrative for it. That was special. But
It really is.
because one of the things, going back to the music of it, I remember I was talking to my partner who she grew up with that version, of course, the Japanese version, and she was like, oh, I love Butterfly and all of that. The songs, they're just so nostalgic, iconic. And I was like, yeah, that's all fine and good, but we got Digimon, Digital Monsters, Digimon are the champions, rinse and repeat. And I remember showing that song to her, and she was just like, what the hell is that?
I can just imagine her horrified expression.
Because, I mean, especially when my friend and I, as I said, we didn't do a review of the film, but we did a commentary track of it, which was amazing to go through it and watch it and everything. But the music is one of the weirdest parts of it because they don't even attempt to, like nowadays, I think they do. They lean more into the Japanese dub and things like that. But back then, no, you were going to get Smash Mouth at the end of the show, or you were going to get just very, not iconic music, but very interesting music that you would remember.
Yeah, it's a weird localization decision, but at the same time memorable in its own right.
I feel as if the only exception to that, though, is the Pokemon theme.
Yeah, it really is.
Don't get me wrong, obviously the old Japanese theme is iconic and everything, but I don't know, compared to if you asked people about that, maybe they'd say, oh yeah, it's Pokemon. Like, obviously everyone in Japan would say, oh yeah, that's Pokemon. But if you were to test that versus I want to be the very best, that's all you have to say to people. To say, I want to be the very best, and you'll get a chorus of people yelling back at you like no one ever was.
Yeah, which is funny because it's the opposite with Digimon. If you start singing the initial lyrics of the intro, people will sing along, especially those who can recognize it. Even just 1 millisecond of the guitar string, oh yeah, they already know what's gonna happen and they're gonna sing out loud. So, it's funny, the opposite happening to Digimon, whereas the English version is the least memorable.
Yeah, because I'm actually surprised that, and obviously this is a testament to how big Pokemon is, but I'm always surprised that Digimon never really took off in the same way. Like, I'm surprised it's still going in this day and age, and they've still got the games, well, some games like
Survive.
Yeah, Survive, Cyber Sleuthio, those kind of ones, but they've never really hit the same heights as Pokemon have.
Well, in the anime, they did. When you put them in a ring together, I guess in the anime category, oh yeah, definitely Pokemon would lose by, no diff.
Yeah, true. If you compare the animes, the Digimon anime, I always found that it was constructed a lot better. Like, it felt as if it was trying to tell a story, whereas in the Pokemon one, I'll always love it, but it was definitely trying to sell you different Pokemon and show them off for the games and things. It's like, oh, what's that Pokemon? Oh, it's Porygon. Well, actually, sorry, that was the worst example I could have given. As soon as I said that, I'm like, yeah, sure, Satsu, just choose the Pokemon that gave hundreds of kids seizures.
That's Pikachu. You do not dare say Porygon is the criminal.
Did you see the official Pokemon account came out and absolved him years later?
Yeah, I did. That's why we always have that traditional X anniversary of Porygon did nothing wrong.
Porygon didn't do anything wrong. And again, to explain to anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about there, yeah, there was a very infamous episode in the 90s of the anime where it only got shown in Japan. The reason for that is because there's an episode where it's very Digimon-esque, actually, funny enough, where they go into, I think they go into
cyberspace.
Yeah, it was like the Pokemon PC or something, and they have to fight Team Rocket, and they're fighting on top of Porygons, which is so damn cool. But then there's a scene where they get missiles thrown at them, and Pikachu blasts them out the air. But what ends up happening is, and I think you'll be able to explain it better, but there's a scene where blue and red lights flash beside one another. I think it was because of the frequency or something that it triggered a lot of seizures for kids. So much so that even The Simpsons made fun of it, which I think was a bit distasteful, to be quite honest.
It really is.
Yeah, all these poor kids who got struck by this, and then they never really brought it back again. Because I heard apparently there was something in the intro that it didn't cause fits or anything or seizures, but I heard in the intro for the old Pokemon they had really fast flashing, and especially with Dragon Ball as well, they had really tense flashing scenes and whatnot. I think that's probably what built my tolerance up, seeing the flashing, all that. But it was really bad though, wasn't it?
It was. When I saw that fact, I finally realized why the flashing lights were so slow in the dub, because they actually were trying to mitigate what happened in the actual original version.
It's quite interesting as well, because I don't think there's been any other Pokemon that has been affected as Porygon has. As a fellow Porygon fan yourself, you'll understand the pain. But the fact is, for any other Pokemon, like there's been a load of episodes that have been cancelled here in the UK, the US, because of controversial content. Like there's one where James decides to dress up as a woman, which is, I mean, that was fine in itself, but what wasn't fine was he had inflatable breasts, which it was a choice, let's just say. It was a choice of an episode. So, of course, because of that inappropriateness, they cancelled that episode. There was the one where Ash caught his Tauros. I always remember this. When people ask, oh, where did he get the 30 or so Tauros? He said he got them out the Safari Zone. And then people ask, well, what happens in that episode? And it's that Mandela effect where you're like, I actually don't know, because they didn't hear that, but they always say, oh, you got it out in the Safari Zone. And that was because they had guns featured, so they couldn't show that. But it's really funny because the fact that, you know, they had guns and that was all about Dratini, the dragon Pokemon, but Dratini never got cancelled for guns. Neither did the other ones. Because although Pikachu, as we said, we're going to put it on the... I'm looking at my Red Panda lawyer just now in the corner. He's giving me the thumbs up that, of course, Pikachu caused the explosion, which caused the red and blue interchanging flashing lights and everything. But what was crazy was that Porygon took the flak for that, and he didn't appear in any episodes until, I think he appeared as a cameo in one of the movies, maybe in the background. But his reputation, even with that being absolved by Pokemon officially, he has not recovered. And he's the only Pokemon, I would say, off the top of my head, that probably suffered from that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I guess so. Nothing else comes off from the top of my head.
I mean, the only one I can think that's close was, is it Wishcash, the catfish Pokemon, where there was an episode about earthquakes or something, and unfortunately when that episode was due to air, there was a terrible earthquake that happened in Japan, so they obviously have cancelled it and pushed it forward. Same with one of the, I think it was, I want to say Generation 5, where they introduced Team Plasma, where they go in and they blow up a couple of buildings because, oh look, they're evil. They cancelled those episodes as well because of natural disasters and things, and that's obviously unfortunate. But I've never seen any Pokemon since have such a bad reputation as Porygon, because I think even surface level Pokemon fans, they'll see Porygon and have this innate fear of, oh my god, it's the one that caused the the issues. It's such a shame, isn't it?
It is a shame, especially since we can never see Porygon 2 ever again in an anime.
I mean, we get to see him in the games, at least.
Yeah, but, you know, seeing that lovable duck in an anime would be fun.
And he's the closest overlap that we can get to a Digimon in Pokemon, isn't he?
Yeah, it is.
I don't want to say, you know, join our cause, but if you want to visit our website, www.porygondidnothingwrong.org.uk, for legal reasons, that's a made-up website. I'm going to say. I say that every time because I'm always worried I make that joke and then someone's going to be like, oh, what is this www? I was like, no, do not go to that website. I can't bet it. Saying that though, before we wrap up, I've got to ask, because obviously you're doing absolutely fantastic work, as I said, on Twitter. You know, you've got your memes aplenty, but you've also got your commentary on very hot topic issues on the community, and you do an absolutely fantastic job with that. as I said before, you've also got the Twitch channel. So what is next for Out of Context Pokemon? Do you have anything planned for 2025, or what's going on?
We have some plans sorted out and still working on the background, but I guess what I can say without revealing too much is that we have very special partner who would like to work with us, which I will be announcing once the details are finally, discussed behind the scenes. I think everyone will be surprised as to who it is once we announce it. My wider plans really is just partner up with more people to work within the community, maybe some outside the community. But I just want to turn this into a professional thing because back then, when we inherited the account in 2023, we just did this for the sake of keeping the page alive and just, like destroy it if it comes down to crypto bros wanting to buy it. But, since December, we've been getting a lot of opportunities knocking on our doors. So, I want to make this into a professional gig. And I hope that it will last for years to come. I want to take advantage of the roadmap that we've been given so far. And the end goal really is that I just want it to be a place where people can just visit, maybe look for something they'd laugh at, and have healthy discussions without being prejudiced by the main owners or anyone who are they're friends with. Really, it's just I work really hard to rebrand the page into something that anyone can feel comfortable visiting as a fan or as an audience or as an outsider. Really, that's my biggest and proudest achievement so far in this page's history.
Between you and your, colleague, friend, co-owner as well.
Yeah, he's Sammy. His name is Sammy.
No, I think you both do an absolutely fantastic job of that, because the amount of pages that I genuinely have seen, and I am online quite a lot because of the podcast and trying to promote it and whatnot, you see a lot of meme pages and you see a lot of them that you think, all right, okay, that's kind of funny, that's funny. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate them because they do cheer me up, but with yours especially, I know exactly what you mean. It could have been so easy for you just to do the same gimmick day in and day out and things and say, all right, okay, here's a Pokemon meme. Oh, Professor Oak doesn't know his grandson's name. Haha, that kind of thing. Like the very milquetoast Pokemon jokes. But at the same time, you've gone from that and you do absolutely fantastic work, the both of you. Honestly, you do fantastic work with the branding of it, inviting other people into your community, as it were. As of this episode, is it right in saying that you're nearly at 1 million followers over there?
Funny thing is, we actually had 1 million followers until November happened, which mass deactivations and migrations to Blue Sky happened.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which I really don't mind, really, because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to boast or anything, but I still believe we're the undisputed champion when it comes to being the #1 Pokemon fan / gimmick account on Twitter. And I also forgot, we actually have a third guy in our party. His name is Optimistic Charizard. I'm sure you've seen this page before. He runs a little fun page called Media with Pokemon Music.
Oh yeah, fantastic page.
Which is funny because I was the one who helped grow that page. Yeah, when I first joined, it was in March 2023. He had, I guess, 2,000 or less followers. But when we worked together, we managed to put the page amongst the top Pokemon fan pages or meme accounts on Twitter, because now it's about to reach 32,000 followers. So yeah, there's two of us. It's just that me and Sammy does most of the work, and I guess Optimistic Charizard is more of the guy who we would actually ask to take over the account if in any case both of us are actually not available.
Yeah.
I guess you can say that unofficially, behind the scenes, me, OOC Pokemon, and Media with Pokemon Music are partners, brothers in arms and stuff like that, officially, at least behind the scenes.
That is honestly great to hear, though, because it's good that you're not infighting with a lot of other meme pages.
The only meme pages I had fought with really were Good Reddit and I guess recently Dream Fans, because, that recent post that idiot did. Yeah, but in fighting, nah. In fact, I do my best to, not promote hate within big pages and especially the community. Unless, of course, it's calling out scalpers and bad actors within the community, which, I am going all out, if you ask me.
Especially something you brought up before about people offering to buy the page and that because of its high reach and influence. Thank you for not doing that, purely because there was a Pokemon page I used to follow years ago, and again, it was very similar. It was more of a gimmick account created for, it might have been Bulbasaur or something, it was like a jokey page, and I thought, alright, this is a cute page, it's fun. And then I remember one time a lot of really random posts coming up in my feed, and I'm like, I do not recognise, why do I follow this person? And then the reason was because it was this former Pokemon account that I think they had either sold their account or they got hacked or something. I think they sold it, to be honest. Again, it wasn't a massive Pokemon page, but it was relatively, had a decent following, and people like, oh, haha, we love it for this particular Pokemon, and then all of a sudden it was just random weird tweets and things. I don't get why people think they can do that I know why, because of the reach and everything that they have, but surely they must think that people are going to click on that this is no longer the same page. I mean, it's a bit like, the old YouTubers you used to watch and things, and they end up getting bought out by completely random companies that try to use their name to promote something completely different. I mean, it's a bit like, or it used to be with Smosh and I think a Fred guy of all people. Weird times. But no, thank you for not doing that.
Well, actually, you can thank Sammy for that, because he's the one who advised both of us to never do it, because he said that he would rather destroy and nuke the page rather than sell it to some loser who's gonna most likely use it as a platform for stake. I wasn't considering selling it, but we stood our ground and we just outright ignored every calls to, or rather requests and buyout requests, especially Good Reddit. They were offering in the $20,000 range. I also recognize that if that happens, then 900,000 people will be exposed to harmful stuff like gambling, crypto, or worse, OnlyFans. So really, we really couldn't bring ourselves to let that happen in our good conscience.
Yeah, well, if one day I log in and I see the page has changed from out of context Pokemon to pixelated Porygon pics, I'll know what happened.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the perfect place to wrap up. So, Kazuhira, thank you so much for coming on today and talking all things Pokemon and all things about your channel.
No problem. And I hope we get to do another podcast, like especially on Pokemon Day or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. If you ever want to come back on again, you are more than welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So before we wrap up, where can these, and again, for all 5 people out there who probably don't know about your account, where can these lovely people find your content online?
Type in @OOC Pokemon on Twitter and you'll find us there on Twitter. We also have a page on Blue Sky. Recently, I launched an Instagram account, but that was the time when I was unaware of the sweeping changes that robotic Neanderthal did to Instagram, so I had to temporarily postpone it until further notice. I guess we have Linktree as well, which is linked in our bio page. You can see it next to the location, Sandgem Town. But yeah, we don't really have to follow us, but if you do, well, that means the world to us. And I guess one last thing, aside from, saying that, hey, we have a Discord channel, which I do, you can check it out on my Linktree. It's mainly focused on Twitch, but also on the Twitter page. But I guess I just want to say that be a good person, and, if you ever see a kid asking you about Pokemon, what is it about, and, stuff like that, I guess, don't be like those people who are saying, get out here, kid, I'm not interested. I guess the best thing you can do really is to, engage with them and encourage them to try it out, because you'll never know that such conversation would actually lead them to a much more brighter future, because I know Pokemon certainly did that for me, and that's pretty much it.
Now that's a lovely message to end on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you as well for having me here.
If you want to listen to more Pokemon content from ourselves, as well as general episodes and the like, then you can indeed check out the podcast at our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. I also want to give a huge shout out to our amazing Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster, Sonia, Ghostie, Encryptic1991. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. It means the world to us. And if you would like exclusive access to bonus episodes, commentary tracks, out of context Porygon picks, for legal reasons that last one's a joke.
yeah, it is.
Then you can check us out at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Chatsunami. I also want to point out that this podcast is a proud member of the Podpack Collective. If you want to check out the amazing podcasts that are attached to that, then you can check us out on Twitter/X at Podpack Collect. But until then, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay hydrated.